How to Play Outgunned. Hi everyone! This is a special How to Play episode of Fire Breathing Kittens podcast. I'm the game master for an upcoming session using the rules for Outgunned. This episode is a summary of what I learned after reading the rulebook. Hopefully this will be a handy guide for how to play for my players, will help me organize myself, and will be useful for you listeners too, who are looking to play your own Outgunned game at home. I have organized this How to Play guide into 23 sections. 1. Game category. 2. Skills. 3. Distances. 4. Gear. 5. How to attack. 6. Grit. 7. Conditions. 8. Timeout. 9. Reloading. 10. Death roulette. 11. Gambling. 12. Cover. 13. Adrenaline. 14. Spotlight. 15. Rides. 16. Chases. 17. Helping allies. 18. Double difficulty. 19. Weak spots. 20. Re-rolling. 21. Extra actions. 22. Heat. And lastly, 23. I'll build an example character. Game category. Outgunned is a cinematic action role-playing game. We've all seen movies where heroes crawl through air ducts, keep a runaway bus above a minimum speed, face off alone against a dozen goons, look to the camera with a dashing cut on their cheek, a hero who walks in slow motion towards the camera while everything behind them explodes. That's the type of game Outgunned is, and that's the sort of hero you will be role-playing as. A hero is someone on a mission who lives dangerously and is one of the good guys. Central to the theme of Outgunned is the idea that the hero is racing against time, making split-second decisions with great consequence, never stopping to look back. There's no rest for heroes. Your goal is to carry out your mission, whether that means avenging your dog, finding your kidnapped loved one, clearing out a bank vault, or something else. Mechanically, you will accomplish this by rolling multiple six-sided dice, also called D6, hoping to get not high or low numbers, but matching results of 2 of a kind, 3 of a kind, or even 4 of the same number across multiple dice. Gear, such as your weapon, give you more dice to roll. Feats during character creation let you re-roll failed rolls when attempting certain types of actions. If the going gets tough, you can spend the limited adrenaline and spotlight resources to pull off something really cool in an epic scene. Skills. When you want your character to do an action that has the risk of something going wrong, you will pick the relevant skill on your character sheet. You will roll as many six-sided dice, also called D6, as you have as a number in that skill and attribute. There are 5 attributes: brawn, nerves, smooth, focus, and crime. Each attribute lists 4 skills under it. You can, and usually will, pair the skill with the attribute it's listed under, but you don't have to. You're not required to combine the attribute that's directly above a skill on the character sheet. For example, the know skill is under the focus attribute on the character sheet. If you are at a fancy cocktail party before an opera and are trying to make a good impression on the mayor with your sophisticated knowledge of opera, you can roll the smooth attribute with the know skill. The know skill is listed under the focus attribute, but you can use that smooth attribute because it better fits what you're trying to do. Success on a skill roll. In Outgunned, success is determined by whether or not you got multiple dice of the same number. It doesn't matter how high or low the number is. A 1 isn't bad and a 6 isn't good. Getting 2 1s or 2 6s is what you're looking for. There are 4 difficulty levels: basic, critical, extreme, and impossible. A basic difficulty needs 2 dice to have matching numbers for you to succeed. For example, 2 2s. If you get a basic success after rolling a dice, you are eligible to re-roll your dice that weren't part of the combination once. A critical difficulty is cleared with 3 of a kind. For example, 3 2s. An extreme difficulty needs 4 dice to have the same number to pass. For example, 4 twos. The impossible difficulty requires 5 dice to show the same number to succeed. What happens if you get 6 dice of a kind? Well, if that ever does happen, which it probably won't, 6 dice of a kind is called a jackpot. If you roll a jackpot, you become the game master, who is called a director in Outgunned, for 1 whole turn. Players can roll 9 dice at most. The probability table for how likely a player is to succeed at each of the 4 difficulty levels for rolling 2 through 9 dice is on page 67. Here is an example of a roll at basic difficulty where 2 dice need to be the same number for you to succeed. Let's say you're sneaking through an air duct quietly, infiltrating the compound stealthily, when suddenly a spider crawls on you. You try to stay as still as possible, because if you react loudly, your enemy could hear you. Roll as many dice as you have in nerves and cool. The director says this is pretty basic. With 2 dice in nerves and 1 in cool, your odds of getting 2 dice to be the same number when rolling 3 dice is 45%. So there's about a 50-50 chance the spider crawls on you when you scream loudly, revealing your location, and a 50-50 chance that you stay quiet. Here's an example roll at critical difficulty where you need 3 dice to show the same number to succeed. It's a timeout and your friend's arm is hurt. You offer to bandage them up. This requires the focus attribute and the heal skill. You have a 3 in both focus and heal, and roll 6 dice. If 3 dice show the same number, you successfully healed your friend. On 6 dice, you have a 37% chance to succeed at a critical difficulty roll. With a reroll, you would have a 75% success rate. If you're not certain what attribute and skill to roll, ask yourself how what you're trying to do could fail. What is at stake here, and what are the consequences of failure? Here is an example. You are driving at top speed towards a bridge when you see that the bridge is rising and a gap is opening over the water. What could go wrong? If you chicken out and stomp on the brakes at the last minute, your car might not have enough speed to clear the gap. Or if you drive poorly, you might launch the car into the river instead of onto the second half of the bridge. Because your nerves and driving skill are what could make the situation fail, roll nerves as your attribute and drive as your skill. Distances. Outgunned's distance ranges are melee, close, medium, and long. Melee range is within 2 meters. Close range is between 2 and 10 meters. You can run 10 meters with a quick action. Medium range is 10 to 50 meters. You can use a full action to run medium range. Most weapons can hit medium range targets. Long range is 50 to 300 meters. Out of range is anything beyond 300 meters, which usually requires a special weapon like a sniper rifle to reach. Gear. In Outgunned, your character will have at least 1 weapon from the gear table. Something like a pistol, revolver, assault rifle, bow and arrows, or even rocket launcher. Every gear weapon has stats that explain how many dice you get to add to your roll when using that weapon at different distance ranges. A +1 at close range means you get 1 extra dice when you're aiming at a target in close range. A -2 at medium range means you roll with 2 fewer dice when you're aiming at a target in medium range. An X at long range means the weapon cannot be used against long-range targets. If there's a G next to the range, the G stands for gambling, and means the weapon could hurt you and your allies as well as your enemies. Use the gambling mechanic when attacking with that weapon. About melee weapons. The rulebook says that melee weapons rarely make a difference, which makes sense when you imagine a baseball bat versus a rocket launcher. So there aren't any stats in the gear table for melee weapons. During melee attacks, you simply roll your brawn attribute and fight skill. How to attack. Attacking uses your skills just like the other rolls. For example, if your spy is firing their silenced pistol at a target at medium range, you would roll as many dice as you have in the focus attribute. For this spy, that's 2 in focus, plus as many dice as the spy has in the shoot skill. For this spy, that's 2 in shoot, plus the number of dice you get from your gear for that range. The silenced pistol gets 0 extra dice at medium range, but it doesn't alert the enemy or reveal your position. That's 2 plus 2 plus 0 equals 4 dice total. How many dice you need to see match depends on the enemy's difficulty. This target has a basic difficulty, which means 2 of the dice you roll have to be the same number to succeed. Rolling 4 dice gives you a 72% chance of succeeding. If you fail to get 2 dice that are the same number, that's the end of your action. If you succeed and get 1 pair, the enemy loses 1 grit. If you succeed twice, like if you get 2 sets of matching dice, then the enemy would lose 2 grit. Grit in Outgunned is similar to hit points in other games. Here's a second example attack. The villain is escaping in an armored limo. The ride has a critical difficulty setting, meaning 3 dice have to match to succeed against it. It has no armor left and is spewing black smoke and screeching as it peels away. If you make this shot, the tire will burst, the wheel won't be able to turn anymore, and the limo might even blow up. You have 1 chance to fire your weapon at long range to take out the tire before they get too far away to be hit. You can attack by rolling as many dice as you have in the nerves attribute, plus the dice in your shoot skill, plus the dice in your weapon at long range. A character who has 3 dice in nerves and 2 dice in shoot would roll 5 dice. If you're wielding a rifle, you don't get any extra dice at long range, but unlike people who have a shotgun or a throwing knife that has an X at long range, your rifle is allowed to attempt the roll. 5 dice have a 21% chance of succeeding at a critical difficulty to get 3 matching dice. With a reroll, that's a 47% chance of succeeding. If you roll the dice and don't get 3 of the same number, you fail, unless you spend a precious resource like an adrenaline or a spotlight. If you roll the dice and do get 3 of the same number, you succeed. The rifle bullet hits the tire, the wheel sprays bright sparks up from the road, the limo fishtails and crashes into a light pole and blows up, depleting 6 grit from everyone inside. Woo! Combat in Outgunned is a series of alternating action turns and reaction turns. On action turns, the heroes can attack or make any action roll they want. Heroes can take 1 quick action for free, such as picking up an item or reloading a weapon. Your roll is made against each specific enemy's defense rating, which ranges from basic, critical, extreme, up to impossible. On reaction turns, heroes must defend themselves with a reaction roll. A lot of outgunned enemies will attack all players at once, such as a spray of bullets or an exploding grenade. The game master for Outgunned, known as a director, will tell the players what attribute and skill to roll to defend. Each enemy has an attack difficulty rating, again ranging from basic to critical, extreme, and impossible. Basic means 2 matching dice, critical means 3 matching dice, extreme means 4 matching dice, and impossible means 5 dice match. If you score extra successes on your reaction roll, you can make a counterattack. For example, if the enemy's attack was basic and only needed 2 of a kind to succeed, and you get 2 1s and 2 6s, you can spend the second success on a counterattack. The enemy loses 1 grit, and you describe how you counterattacked them. An extra success at the enemy's attack difficulty level can also be spent to protect a friend who failed their reaction roll. Your first success protects you, and your second success can protect your friend. Here is an example defense roll. The enemy is shooting at you. The director tells you all to roll your brawn plus stunt number of dice at critical difficulty to dodge out of the way to avoid being hit and losing grit. Your character has 2 dice in brawn and 3 in stunt. 2 plus 3 means you roll 5 dice total, giving you a 21% chance of getting 3 matching dice to defend against a critical difficulty attack. If you don't get 3 matching dice, then you lose 1 grit. Grit. Grit in Outgunned is similar to hit points in other games. When a roll isn't dangerous, you're not going to lose any grit. When you fail at a dangerous roll, though, you lose grit based on the roll's difficulty. Fail a basic roll and lose 1 grit. Failing a critical roll means you lose 3 grit. Failing an extreme roll means you lose 9 grit. Failing an impossible roll means you lose all grit. The character sheet for Outgunned has 12 grit placeholders on it. When you lose grit, fill in that many grit boxes on the character sheet. Or if you're not using that character sheet, keep track of the 8th position, which is labeled with these words: bad, gain a condition. And the 12th position, which is labeled hot, gain 2 adrenaline. When you reach 8 and 12, remember to do those things. Damage control. Damage control is when you can use smaller successes to mitigate how bad the failure of a dangerous roll was. For example, if the dangerous roll required a critical, 3 matching dice, and you only got a basic, 2 matching dice, then you can use the smaller basic success to mitigate the failure to the critical roll. For every basic success you roll on a critical difficulty, dangerous challenge that requires 3 matches, lose 1 less grit. For every critical success you roll on an extreme dangerous challenge that needed 4 matches, lose 3 fewer grit. You can't do damage control for an impossible roll. When all of your grit boxes are filled up, representing that you've lost all your grit, the next time you are supposed to add grit, you have to take a spin on the death roulette. You can't use damage control to help your friends, only yourself. Recovering grit. You can recover grit by sleeping, taking a break the director agrees is appropriate for a full recovery, and at the end of the session. Your grit recovers back to full. Conditions. When you fail a roll, the director might tell you that you gained a condition. Your 8th grit loss, the box labeled bad, also gives you a condition. Conditions are written as a -1. This -1 means you roll 1 fewer dice. For example, if you were going to roll 6 dice, but your condition says -1, you would only roll 5 dice. Most conditions are linked to a core attribute and apply to rolls made with that attribute. When you take a beating or fall from a height or get blown up, you might gain the hurt condition. While hurt, your brawn rolls are made with 1 less dice. If you seek out and receive medical care, that can remove the hurt condition. When you survive danger by an inch, or your efforts fail, or you're under a great deal of stress, you might gain the nervous condition. While nervous, your nerve rolls are made with 1 less dice. When you get embarrassed in front of other people, or give your friends a reason not to trust you or lose respect for you, you might gain the foolish condition. While foolish, your smooth rolls have 1 less dice. You can overcome feeling foolish by doing something that gets you recognition or respect. When you think about a problem for too long without finding a solution, or you get charmed or confused, you might get the distracted condition. While distracted, Your focus rolls are all at -1, one less dice. You can overcome being distracted by spending 2 adrenaline on a focus roll. When you're afraid of losing something or someone important to you, or suffer a great shock, you might gain the scared condition. While scared, all the rolls you make with the crime attribute are made with 1 fewer dice. You can overcome being scared by facing the subject of your fear and being victorious. You are free to invent other conditions that fit this format. Page 93 of the rulebook gives some examples like disheartened, that gives you -1 to all rolls requiring courage. Angry, that gives you a -1 to all rolls requiring calmness or precision. Confused, that gives you a -1 to all knowledge rolls, etc. The tired condition isn't linked to any attribute. You just look tired. You can overcome being tired by eating a hot meal and getting a good night's sleep. There's no dice rolling penalty, but being tired counts as a condition. The reason why how many conditions you have matters is because 3 conditions are fine, but the 4th condition you gain makes you broken, which means you roll a -1 to all your rolls. You can't gain any more conditions when you're broken. It's already affecting all of your rolls. You can overcome being broken by spending a few days in a hospital, or if a friend rolls for focus and heal during a timeout to treat your wounds at extreme difficulty, 4 matching dice. You can also spend a spotlight to remove any 1 condition, including the broken condition. 2 conditions can be removed per day maximum. Time out. Your character can recover from conditions when they are completely safe from all dangers. One example of this is during a timeout. A timeout is a breather scene where you can recover a bit. There are 5 possible actions during a timeout. Each character can choose 2 of the 5 timeout actions. These actions are investigating to find clues, healing oneself or an ally, fixing a weapon or a ride, shopping to buy weapons or gear or magazines, and working on something else. A timeout ends once each player has had a chance to do 2 of those actions or has said that they pass. Failure isn't the end in Outgunned. When you roll dice and it's a failure, think of these 4 things you can roleplay doing that will progress the story, a type of failing forward. You can roll with the punches, suggesting an unpleasant consequence for either this scene or a future scene as a barter to the GM for letting you accomplish your goal. You can pay the price, offering to gain a condition or lose some cash or break a gear in order to achieve your goal. If you want, in Outgunned, you can always choose to sacrifice a piece of gear to gain 1 more dice for an important roll. If a heal roll is really important, you can choose to sacrifice your clothes and become bedraggled looking to use the cloth as bandages and get an extra dice for your heal roll. You can take the hard road, not achieving your goal but instead gaining an important clue or information that could point towards a different path. Lastly, you could face danger, which is when you encounter an enemy because of your failure. Players are encouraged to name these 4 options: roll with the punches, pay the price, take the hard road, and face danger, and present some ideas to your director when you fail a roll. Reloading. As long as you're succeeding in your attacks, you're not going to run out of bullets. There are only 3 ways to run out of bullets, which Outgunned tracks as magazines of bullets, or mags. The first way to empty your magazine is to roll a failure, such as when you shoot. Imagine that you just kept firing over and over and over until the click, click, click of an unloaded weapon told you that you not only didn't hit your target, but you also emptied your magazine. Your director can say your magazine became unusable from any failed roll in general. The second way you can run out of bullets is by choosing voluntarily to go what's called full auto. When you want, you can opt to go full auto to get a +1 to your roll in exchange for needing to reload afterwards. More bullets means you are more likely to hit. The third way you can empty your magazine is choosing to offer covering fire to a friend. Your friend gets the +1 dice on their next reaction defensive roll while you lay down covering fire for them. It uses all your bullets to keep the enemy distracted while your friend survives. When any of these three things happen, failure, going full auto, or covering fire, you'll need to reload. Spend a quick action and check off one of the magazines on your character sheet. If you don't have any magazines left, you didn't reload. Death roulette. So it's happened. You had been out of grit. All 12 of your grit boxes had been filled in, and now you're supposed to lose more grit, but there isn't any left. It's time to spin on the death roulette. Outgunned's mechanism for determining player character death is rooted in probability. Every character begins the game with 1 out of 6 bullet positions filled in. To spin on the death roulette, roll a 6-sided dice. The first time you roll, only rolling a 1 will mean your character is left for dead. A 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 are fine, you're safe. Describe how you narrowly escaped being left for dead. Every time your character spins the death roulette, 1 more bullet is added to it. The second roll, a 1 or a 2, will mean your character is left for dead. A 3, 4, 5, or 6 are still safe, a narrow escape. Anything that says it adds a lethal bullet to your death roulette increases that number by 1. If a friend spends a spotlight to save you from a failed death roulette roll, the hero who used the spotlight describes the epic action they took to save your life. If nobody spends a spotlight to save you, your character isn't necessarily dead, but they are left for dead, which means you get left behind, or are unconscious or too scared to continue, etc. You can describe what's stopping your character from being able to continue. A good game master, called a director in Outgunned, will give you a character sheet for a non-player character, so you can still play in the session. It's also possible for a character who was left for dead to rejoin the story at a turning point or during a showdown. Turning points and showdowns are big boss fights, basically. A turning point is a really important boss fight that changes the whole direction of the adventure, but isn't at the end of it. And a showdown is often at the end, the final confrontation. When a character returns from being left for dead in a turning point or a showdown, they return with a scar. A scar is something that seriously affects your character going forward, like a strong emotional or physical change because of what you went through. Gambling. When you gamble in Outgunned, a gamble has the threat of you losing more grit than you normally would. When you handle explosives, you're gambling. When you drive at top speed, you're gambling. If you're firing at an enemy who is in melee range of your ally, you're gambling that you're not going to hit your ally. When you've attempted something truly insane that might pay off in a big way, your director might tell you that you're gambling. On a gamble, look at your dice for 1s. Every 1 you roll is 1 grit you lose. Ouch. But gambles aren't all downside. You can choose to declare a roll as a gamble if you want. When you opt to gamble on a roll, declare that you want what you're trying to do to be a gamble. If your director agrees, then it is. Gain 1 extra dice on that roll and report any 1s. Each 1 you rolled is 1 lost grit. Yes, you can re-roll 1s if you were gambling and got some 1s and have a re-roll. Re-rolling can help you get rid of some of those 1s. Grit damage only counts the dice on the table at the end of all re-rolls. Cover! If you spend a quick action to duck behind partial cover in Outgunned, you roll with 1 extra dice on your rolls during the reaction defending phase of combat, and roll with one fewer dice during the action phase of combat. If you spend your whole turn getting fully covered, completely covered, then you are automatically going to succeed on reaction defending rolls, but your attack rolls are made with 3 fewer dice. Yes, you can push someone else behind cover in Outgunned. So the target of your cover, quick or full action, can be yourself or an ally. If you want to try to dive behind cover and take a friend with you, too, you can do that. Roll for an extreme difficulty, which needs 4 dice to match to succeed. Adrenaline. Every character starts the game with 1 adrenaline. You can spend adrenaline to gain 1 extra 6-sided dice, also called a d6, on a roll. The most dice you are allowed to roll is 9. Some feats require adrenaline to activate them. If you have a lot of adrenaline, you can exchange 6 adrenaline for 1 spotlight. More adrenaline is gifted by the Game Master, called a director in this Outgunned game, as a reward for doing exceptional things. You might be gifted an adrenaline when you make a great sacrifice, induce strong emotions, have an idea that rocks the story, if everyone cheers what you did, etc. Spotlight. Every character starts the game with 1 spotlight. You can have at most 3 spotlights at the same time. You can spend 1 spotlight to gain a success without rolling dice, to remove a condition, to save a ride that is about to be destroyed, to barter with the director to do something you normally couldn't, or to save a friend who lost at the death roulette and is about to die. After you spend the spotlight on most things, you will flip a coin. Heads, you spent the spotlight and it's gone. Tails, you immediately regain the spotlight as if you hadn't spent it. The only spotlight expense that works differently is when you used the spotlight to save a friend. If you saved someone and flipped tails, they gain the spotlight. Maybe they'll save you next time, who knows? How to gain spotlight. The 2 main ways to gain a spotlight are that you can say your catchphrase to conclude an epic dramatic scene, or you can invoke your flaw to make your situation incredibly, terribly worse. If it's not cool or impactful enough, the director might give you nothing or an adrenaline instead of a spotlight. You can spend 6 adrenaline to gain 1 spotlight. The circumstances of the scene can affect your roll. If you're setting up the roll favorably or making a smart choice, the Game Master, also called the director in Outgunned, might reward you with 1 extra dice to roll. If you're acting recklessly or the circumstances are against you, the director might make you roll with 1 fewer dice. Rides. In Outgunned, your character can drive bikes, cars, boats, jet skis, helicopters, planes, tanks, and any other type of vehicle. Each ride has a speed stat of 0, 1, 2, or 3 that represents how fast your starting speed at the start of the chase is. Rides start out with armor, which you can track on your character sheet. They can lose armor as a consequence of rolling a failure, if you land the ride poorly after a jump, or if an enemy attacks you. Once your ride has been hit 3 times, it is out of armor and begins to smoke and is harder to steer. If the ride is hit 1 more time, it bursts into flames and blows up. Any hero still on board when a ride blows up loses 6 grit. Rides that have the armored ability, like tanks, start with 3 extra armor. Heroes can repair rides in scenes where they're out of danger. Roll focus and fix during a timeout. If you succeed at critical difficulty, the ride recovers 1 armor. If you succeed at extreme difficulty, the ride recovers 2 armor. If you succeed rolling focus and fix at impossible difficulty, the ride recovers all lost armor. Chases! One cool thing about Outgunned that not many tabletop role-playing games have is official mechanics for how chases work. There are 2 scores to track during chases: need and speed. Need represents the objective of the chase, such as the hero's need to escape or the hero's need to catch the villain. Need is a number you can whittle down like grit or hit points. You're actually building up to it, but it's a similar idea. Need will range between 6 and 18, averaging 10 plus or minus 2. Speed represents how fast the heroes are going. Vehicles, called rides in Outgunned, each have a speed stat that is how fast they start out going during a chase. This speed stat ranges between 0 and 3. At the end of each turn, the heroes fill in as many need boxes as their ride's speed. For example, if you have a car with a speed of 1, at the end of that first turn, you'll fill in 1 box of need. Chases have action and reaction turns just like combat. During your action turn, you can try to boost your speed by pushing on the gas pedal or finding a shortcut by rolling nerves plus survival to go off-road. Or you can decrease your enemy's speed by hanging out the car window and opening fire on them. You would roll nerves plus shoot to fire at them. Decreasing your enemy's speed number mechanically increases your speed because it's a relative pace between 2 rides. Chase actions that succeed on a critical difficulty, matching 3 dice, increase your speed by 1. Chase actions that succeed on an extreme difficulty, 4 matching dice, increase your speed by 2. If you fail to get even a basic success, 2 matching dice, on a roll during a chase, describe how your ride's speed decreased by 1. Reaction rolls made during a chase are dangerous, which means that when a hero fails a roll, they also lose grit. There are some examples of rolls you can make during a chase on page 153, such as suddenly stepping on the brakes by rolling nerves plus cool, while everyone else rolls nerves plus awareness. If your speed ever drops below 0, the director can erase an already filled in need box. If your speed ever hits 5, you're going super fast. All action rolls at speed of 5 or more are gambling. If you reach a speed of 6, that is top speed, and the driver has to suffer a -1 to all of their rolls, rolling with 1 fewer dice as you struggle to control the ride. Once you have filled in all the need boxes, the chase is over. If you don't succeed at a chase, some potential consequences are that your ride lost all its armor and explodes, or the heroes lost all their grit and pass out, or the chase countdown ran out and the enemies got away or caught you. For directors, if a chase has gone on for 3 turns, you can roll a dice, and if the result is higher than the player's speed, the chase could end there. There's a list of complications to throw at your players during a chase on page 160. These special actions are things directors can do with clearly defined consequences if the heroes fail. You can do them after 3, 6, and 9 need boxes. The players receive an adrenaline, and the director does the special action on the list. Helping allies. If you give up rolling your dice to help an ally, they can get one of 3 options. The director picks which option happens. The first option is a +1, which means an extra dice as they roll. The second option is an automatic success without rolling any dice. The third option is that in a situation where the friend had no chance of success and wasn't even going to be able to roll the dice, they now have a chance to roll. Double difficulty and alternatives for successes. The double difficulty roll on page 64 of the rulebook is an example of one mechanism for making more difficult rolls feasible. With double difficulty, you break up a single roll into multiple thresholds. The player rolls once, but is looking for 2 successes amongst those rolled dice. A double difficulty basic success roll requires 2 basic successes. This means the player needs 2 dice to have the same number twice, like 1 set of 3s and 1 pair of 4s. If the player gets one of the successes they need, they can avoid part of the consequences. If they get both of the successes they need, they can avoid both consequences. An example situation where a double difficulty roll can be applied is if the player is trying to catch a data drive with secret information in their hands mid-air while a thug is trying to tackle them. One success can apply to catching the data drive, and the other success can apply to avoiding the mid-air tackle. Double difficulty rolls are just one example of how you, the director, can break down difficult and complex scenarios into multiple individual challenges. There are two other ways. Degrees of success. A second method to make more difficult rolls feasible is that you can also grant degrees of success, such as the example given on page 65, where, on a challenge to search for weapons the players can use, the player who got a basic success finds a chair they can break a leg off of to use as a bat, while the player who got a critical success finds a pistol taped to the underside of a drawer. 3 smaller successes equal 1 larger success. A third method to make more difficult rolls more feasible is to add 3 smaller successes up to be worth as much as 1 greater success. For example, on page 67, the rulebook discusses how 3 basic successes can combine into 1 critical success, and 3 critical successes can combine into 1 extreme success. So double difficulty, degrees of success, and combining 3 smaller success into 1 larger success are all alternative conditions the Outgunned rulebook suggests directors can use to determine successes. Weak spots. There are 3 types of enemies in Outgunned: goons, bad guys, and bosses. If you're fighting a really tough boss and things aren't going your way, players, consider trying a roll to find their weak spot. It takes an action roll, which is basically like not getting to attack that turn. You roll your focus and your detect number of dice. The difficulty is equal to the enemy's defense. If you succeed, the director has a table they can randomly generate right in that moment what the enemy's weak spot is. For directors, that's on page 147. Each weak spot on the table grants the heroes +1 dice to a specific way to attack the enemy. Re-rolling. Re-rolling is sort of a strategy topic. Page 68 suggests that the players should re-roll at least half their rolls. There's no guaranteed right answer, and the choice to re-roll or not depends on the situation and the player's assessment of risk, so I've put this at the end of this How to Play guide. Re-rolling doesn't cost any resources in Outgunned. On page 68, the rulebook says that for rolls where players get at least a basic success, which means at least 1 pair of matching numbers, they can choose to re-roll the dice that didn't match. If they re-roll the failed dice and get more of that matching number, that's great. They got that new level of success on the roll. If they re-roll the failed dice and don't get any extra dice to their pair, then not getting a better result loses the former success. Losing a basic success means you can't spend it to mitigate the grit loss. Remember, if you got at least a basic success, then failing on a critical doesn't hurt as much. Rerolling a second time is called going all in. On a first reroll, you lose 1 of your successes. On an all-in reroll, you lose all of your successes. There are feats and gear that grant the player what's called a free reroll in a specific situation. This phrase, free reroll, means that when rerolling fails to add any more dice to the match, the player doesn't lose that initial success. So it's free because you don't risk losing your initial success. There's no possible cost. Let's take a moment to talk about probability. There are 4 difficulty levels: basic, critical, extreme, and impossible. Basic difficulty needs 2 dice to match numbers for the player to succeed. Critical difficulty is cleared with 3 of a kind. The rulebook says a director, which is what Outgunned calls game masters, should in general set all rolls at critical difficulty. An extreme difficulty needs 4 dice to get the same number to pass, and the impossible difficulty requires 5 dice to show the same number for the player to succeed. There's a probability table on page 67. The rulebook lists how likely it is to succeed at each of the 4 difficulty levels for players rolling 2 through 9 dice. If you're running Outgunned as a director, you can take a look at that table to pick the probability of success that is appropriate for a player's roll. The rulebook recommends usually going with the critical difficulty, where 3 dice match. If you look at the basic difficulty, getting 2 numbers to match is 91% likely to happen when rolling 5 dice, so it makes sense that a 91% chance of success isn't what the rulebook recommends. But looking at the table carefully, it's worth noting that although most tabletop role-playing games average about 60 to 80% chance of success when a player attacks or does a skill, Outgunned at critical difficulty lists a 21% chance of success on 5 dice, 37% chance of success on 6 dice, 54% chance of success on 7 dice, and 70% chance of success on 8 dice. The extreme difficulty is 2% likely to succeed on 5 dice, 5% likely to succeed on 6 dice, and 11% likely to succeed on 7 dice. So if re-rolling didn't exist, or if your players don't do it, then when a player rolls their 5 dice, there would be a huge drop-off between a 91% chance of success to get 2 matches, a 21% chance of success of getting 3 matches, and a 2% chance of getting 4 matches on 5 dice. This probability spread is probably why re-rolling is an option granted to the players. With re-rolls, a critical success happens 47% of the time with 5 dice, 75% of the time with 6 dice, and 89% of the time with 7 dice, and 99% of the time with 8 dice. The extreme difficulty that had an 11% chance of succeeding with 1 roll now has a 51% chance of succeeding on 7 dice after a re-roll. So, as the director, do look at the reroll column in that table. The players have no resource that they spend and run out of that limits how often they reroll, so the reroll columns for probability prediction probably will get used a lot during play, unless your players don't reroll for some reason. I mean, people make choices, and then they are really out of luck. Extra actions. If you score more successes than were required, then you can do extra things. An extra basic success means you can take a free bonus action. Quick actions include grabbing or throwing an item, reloading a weapon, reaching partial cover, etc. quick things. An extra critical success lets you take an extra full action. Full actions include breaking through a door, getting behind total cover, finding a clue, etc. things that take moderate effort. If you get an extra extreme success, you can do a free bonus cool action. Cool actions include jumping off an exploding building without getting hurt, hitting a tiny target when you were running, hiding a tiny listening device on your sworn enemy, etc. unbelievably cool and difficult actions. Some feats can be activated by an extra action. You can also use your extra action to help a friend. For example, if you and your friend were jumping in between buildings with a critical difficulty rating and they got a failure and you succeed twice, you can give your second critical level success to your friend to both jump safely across the gap and both land on the building. Heat. Heat is a mechanic for playing Outgunned long-term as a campaign. The pressure on the characters changes based on how they're doing. When the heroes fail an objective or the villain wins at something, the heat reflects that. Things happen at different heat numbers. Like at heat 6, all heroes add a lethal bullet to their death roulette. At heat 9, all enemies have 1 extra feat point. At heat 12, all heroes get 1 more adrenaline and a lethal bullet, etc. Fire-Breathing Kittens plays one-shot, one-session adventures, so we won't be using the heat mechanic, but it's cool to mention that it exists and is available to help directors run longer campaigns with Outgunned. Creating your hero. Creating your hero for playing Outgunned involves making about 10 choices. You'll choose a role and a trope, which will determine your attribute and skill points. You'll choose 3 feats, which are listed in your role and trope. Your roll will also give you some gear to pick from, and lastly, you'll mark 1 adrenaline, 1 spotlight, and 1 cash. And all new heroes get 2 free skill points wherever they like. You'll write all of these details and your character's personal data on your character sheet. Let's create a hero together. Michelle Breton, a non-player character from the episode Rewind to Remember. She's a half-elf artificer who is currently lost in a different dimension. I pull up the character sheet and start writing on it. There are 10 roles to pick from. The role that most matches an artificer is probably the brain. Brains get 1 point to their focus attribute and 1 point each in 10 skills, so I'll write those on the character sheet. The 10 skills that I boost by 1 point each are Drive, Leadership, Speech, Style, Detect, Fix, Heal, Know, Dexterity, and Stealth. Next, we choose 2 from the 6 listed feats. Page 52 explains what those 6 feats do, and reading them, it seems like Mastermind, where we can repeat 1 roll of any kind, ignoring all negative ones from conditions and circumstances, looks good. And so does Scientist, which lets Michelle choose a STEM discipline, i.e. engineering, chemistry, botany, etc. Michelle's specialty is machines. Gain a free re-roll for all rolls regarding your chosen discipline, machines. After filling in some personal data such as her name, job as a researcher, age as an adult, catchphrase, and flaw, we're done with the role section of making a character. I like her catchphrase, which is, "With the right lever, I'll move the world." As an adult, Michelle has no advantages and no disadvantages, but if you are role-playing as a kid or someone older, they get special customizations described on page 38. The next part of character creation is to choose 1 from the 18 tropes. Some example tropes are bad to the bone, jerk with a heart of gold, lone wolf, trusty sidekick, free spirit, vigilante, etc. Michelle has definitely had some moments where everyone else is hyped and she's spotted something she needs to point out that unfortunately ruins the moment. That cynical streak can be useful to a team's survival, though, so this trope called Party Killer is worth having on the crew. Choosing a trope lets you put a point into an attribute. I choose the Nerves attribute instead of the Crime attribute. We also get 1 point each in the 8 listed skills, which are Force, Stunt, Cool, Shoot, Leadership, Awareness, Stealth, and Streetwise. And we pick 1 feat from the 4 listed, picking Head on a Swivel, which gives Michelle a free reroll when preempting dangers or ambushes, or trying to locate lurking enemies. Lastly, we mark 1 adrenaline, 1 spotlight, and 1 cash, and all new heroes get 2 free skill points wherever they like. I put those 2 skill points in the Fix skill and the Know skill. Michelle didn't start with a weapon, so I can spend her 1 cash to buy a pistol on page 103, and fill in the weapon's stats of 0, 0, 0, -2 for its melee, close, medium, and long-range modifiers. The weapons page says all weapon purchases come with 1 magazine of ammo, and if this is during character building, page 57 says that starting character creation weapons start with 2 magazines of ammunition. 1 magazine starts in the weapon ready to be fired, and the second is written on the character sheet by filling in one of the bullet placeholders. Ta-da! Michelle Breton is a completed character. Voila! Done. I like how fast it is to create a character in Outgunned. It reminds me of Smash Up or of No Place Called Home, where you pick 2 things and put them together and you're done. There is an alternative strategy you can use when creating a character if you want to spend a bit more time. That is to pick 3 skills you want to be amazing at from the list of 20 skills, and find a role and a trope that gives you the most points in those 3 skills. Each point is a dice you get to roll when doing that thing. After making a few character sheets, that's the method I ended up going with, honestly. It's nice to be good at the 3 skills you'll do most often. Here's some character building strategy for when you make your character. During the game, your actions are going to be you rolling your choice of trait, plus your choice of skill's number of dice. Specialized gear can boost certain types of action with an extra dice. The feats let you get a free re-roll at the types of actions you're good at. The normal difficulty is that you'll want to get 3 dice to match one another. You'll need a reroll usually to succeed at getting 3 matches with 5 dice. So I just want to point this out here. The average success rate on a not re-rolled critical challenge for 5 dice is 21%. 21% chance of success means a 79% chance of failure. That's why you want to pick the role and the trope that boost the attributes and skills you're going to be using, and give you access to feats that let you re-roll the types of actions you're going to be doing, and if you can, a gear that gives that type of action 1 extra dice. Let's say you want to build a James Bond type character who succeeds most times he flirts. If you build a character with 1 dice in the smooth attribute and 1 dice in the flirt skill, and no gear to give you a +1 dice and no feats to reroll when you flirt, you'll be bad at flirting, James Bond. With your 2 dice, you would have a 0% chance of successfully beating a critical difficulty roll, which requires getting 3 matching dice. But if you want to build a James Bond who is good at flirting, you absolutely can with this system. Pick a role and a trope that give you 3 in the attribute smooth and 3 in the skill flirt, so that your base dice is 6. If it's possible, pick a gear that gives you +1 dice on flirting rolls, and pick a feat that lets you re-roll flirting actions for free. You're at 7 dice with a free re-roll, and you have an 89% chance of succeeding at critical difficulty when you flirt. So that is something I'm pointing out about character building. Build a character with points in the trait and skill you think you're going to use the most. Look for gear that will give you an extra dice to roll when you do that skill, and look for traits that will give you a free reroll when you do that type of action. For players in my upcoming Outgunned game, when you build your character, please follow the starting character rules, and get an additional 5 cash to spend on your choice of gear. Also gain 2 skill points to assign to the skill or skills of your choosing, 1 extra feat of your choice, and 1 extra adrenaline. Hopefully this little rules chat helps my players build their characters and understand how to play. For everyone listening, if you'd like to hear an example adventure, the episode of Fire Breathing Kittens podcast right after this is a demonstration of us playing Outgunned in a one-shot game session. We invite you to listen to it to hear an example of Outgunned in action. We encourage you to find the Outgunned rulebook yourself and play a game with friends.